In the heart of Europe, Belgium is known for its beautiful cities and rich culture. But in the 1990s, an unimaginable horror gripped the nation. Marc Dutroux, a convicted criminal, operated in plain sight, kidnapping, abusing, and murdering children. His reign of terror exposed a chilling web of corruption, incompetence, and evil. Fear and outrage swept across the country. Parents locked their doors. Citizens took to the streets demanding justice. The Beast of Belgium wasn't just a man. It became a symbol of a broken system and stolen innocence. This is the horrifying story of Marc Dutroux. Troubled beginning. Born in November 1956 in Brussels, Marc Dutroux's childhood was marked by instability and neglect. His parents separated when he was young, and he grew up with little supervision or structure. By his teenage years, he displayed concerning behaviors, manipulation, cruelty, and an inability to feel empathy. School records noted his difficulties connecting with others. Those who knew him described a young man with a charming exterior, but a disturbing emptiness beneath. These early warning signs, overlooked or dismissed, would evolve into something far more sinister. The seeds of a monster were already taking root. First crimes, the pattern emerges. His early 20s, Dutroux had already begun his criminal career. Petty theft escalated to violent robberies. In 1979, he married his first wife, but the relationship quickly deteriorated amidst allegations of domestic violence. Dutroux showed a pattern of predatory behavior toward vulnerable people. He became increasingly sophisticated in his manipulation tactics, learning to present a normal facade while harboring dark intentions. Law enforcement had multiple encounters with him, but failed to recognize the escalating danger. His criminal record grew, yet the system viewed each offense in isolation rather than seeing the emerging pattern of a dangerous predator. The first convictions. The first clear warning came in the mid-1980s when Dutroux was arrested for kidnapping and raping 5 young girls. The victims, aged between 11 and 19, described horrific torture at his hands. In April 1989, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison, a punishment that should have removed him from society for over a decade. Court psychiatrists labeled him a psychopath with sadistic tendencies and warned he would likely reoffend. Their reports detailed his complete lack of remorse and his dangerous fixation on young girls. These clear warnings were filed away in a system that would soon make a catastrophic mistake. Early release, the fatal decision. In April 1992, after serving just 3 years of his 13-year sentence, Marc Dutroux walked free. Justice Minister Melchior Wathalet approved his early release despite warnings from prison officials and psychiatrists. The decision was part of Belgium's effort to reduce prison overcrowding. Dutroux was released with minimal supervision and no meaningful rehabilitation. He returned to society with his predatory instincts intact and now armed with new determination. Authorities classified him as disabled, providing him with government benefits that he would use to fund his criminal activities. Belgium had knowingly released a predator back into its communities, building the House of Horrors. With his newfound freedom, Dutroux began methodically preparing for crimes far worse than before. He purchased abandoned houses in dismal neighborhoods where neighbors wouldn't ask questions. His main property in Marcinelle became the center of his operation. In the basement, he constructed a concealed cell, less than 7 feet long and less than 4 feet wide, hidden behind a concrete door. He installed soundproofing, chains, and a ventilation system. This wasn't an impulsive criminal. This was calculated evil. As unsuspecting families went about their daily lives in Belgium, Marc Dutroux was creating a prison designed for children. The accomplices. Dutroux didn't act alone. His second wife, Michel Martin, a former schoolteacher, became his willing accomplice. Michel Lelièvre, a drug addict easily manipulated by Dutroux, joined their operation. Bernard Weinstein, a French criminal, also became involved. Together they formed a network that would enable the kidnappings and cover-ups. Martin later admitted she knew children were imprisoned in her home but did nothing to help them. She would even be tasked with feeding them when Dutroux was imprisoned for car theft, a responsibility she would fatally neglect. These accomplices expanded Dutroux's reach and capability, allowing his operation to grow beyond what he could achieve alone. Julie and Melissa, the first disappearances. On June 24, 1995, 8-year-old friends Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo vanished while playing near Julie's home in Grace-Hollogne. Their disappearance triggered a nationwide search. Parents kept their children indoors as fear spread across Belgium. Police distributed thousands of missing person posters showing the girls' smiling faces. Investigators followed numerous leads but found nothing substantial. Unknown to them, the girls had been abducted by Dutroux and were imprisoned in his hidden dungeon. Julie and Melissa's parents made emotional public appeals, begging for information about their daughters. Their pleas reached millions, but not their children who remained trapped just miles away. And in Ifje, the terror continues. Less than 2 months later, on August 22nd, tragedy struck again when 17-year-old Anne Marchal and 19-year-old Ifje Lambrechts disappeared after attending a show in Ostend. The teenagers were last seen at a tram stop near the coast. When they failed to return home, their families immediately reported them missing. The similarities between the cases alarmed investigators, but they failed to connect them to Dutroux. Dutroux and Weinstein had posed as police officers to trick the girls into their vehicle. Anne and Ifje were then drugged, chained in Dutroux's house, and repeatedly assaulted. For Belgium, the nightmare was deepening, with 4 girls now missing without a trace. Life in the dungeon. The conditions in Dutroux's dungeon were beyond inhumane. The small concrete cell barely allowed movement. Chains restricted the victims further. Soundproofing ensured their screams went unheard. The girls were starved, dehydrated, and subjected to repeated sexual assaults. They were forced to write letters to their families, giving false hope that they might still be alive. Julie and Melissa spent months in this darkness, clinging to each other for comfort. They scratched marks on the walls to track passing days. Their only human contact was with their tormentor. Psychological torture compounded their physical suffering as hope of rescue slowly dimmed with each passing day. The first police failure. As families desperately searched for their children, Belgian police were making critical errors. Officers received tips specifically naming Dutroux as a suspect, but failed to thoroughly investigate. In December 1995, police actually searched Dutroux's Marcinelle house but missed the hidden dungeon, despite hearing voices inside. They dismissed the sounds as coming from outside. An officer reportedly noticed the recently constructed basement wall, but didn't order it examined. The search was cursory and unprofessional. Most shockingly, police ignored evidence found in Dutroux's home that matched items belonging to the missing girls. These failures weren't just mistakes, they were catastrophic lapses that cost innocent lives. Dutroux's temporary arrest. In December 1995, Dutroux was arrested, not for kidnapping but for involvement in a stolen car ring. He was imprisoned for 3 months while Julie and Melissa remained hidden in his dungeon. His wife, Michelle Martin, was supposed to feed them, but later confessed she was too afraid to enter the basement. She left the girls to starve. The murder of Weinstein. 6i late 1995, tensions rose between Dutroux and his accomplice Bernard Weinstein. Fearing Weinstein might expose their crimes, Dutroux drugged him, buried him alive, and killed him. This murder revealed Dutroux's willingness to eliminate anyone who threatened his operation, even his own associates. Investigators would later find Weinstein's body buried on Dutroux's property, along with the remains of Julie and Melissa. The autopsy revealed Weinstein had been given tranquilizers before being buried. This cold-blooded murder of his own accomplice demonstrated that Dutroux's viciousness knew no bounds. No one, not even those who assisted him, was safe from his brutality. Sabine Dardenne, the 5th victim. On May 28, 1996, 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne left her home in Caen to cycle to school. She never arrived. Dutroux had abducted her along her route and immediately imprisoned her in his dungeon. For 80 days, Sabine endured unspeakable abuse while Belgium searched for her. Dutroux told her that he was protecting her from a gang that wanted to kill her, and that her parents had refused to pay a ransom. He forced her to write desperate letters to her family. Through extraordinary resilience, Sabine maintained her mental strength, even confronting Dutroux about contradictions in his stories. She kept a diary documenting her captivity, evidence that would later prove crucial in court. Laetitia Delhaize, the break in the case. On August 9, 1996, 14-year-old Laetitia Delhaize was abducted after leaving a public swimming pool in Bertrix. This time, witnesses noticed a suspicious white van and recorded part of its license plate. Finally, investigators had a solid lead. The partial plate was traced to Marc Dutroux, a convicted child rapist who should have been under surveillance. Within days, police arrested Dutroux and raided his properties. This time they conducted a thorough search. In the hidden dungeon, they found both Sabine Dardenne and Laetitia Delhaize, alive but traumatized. After over a year of disappearances, police had finally caught the Beast of Belgium. The rescue. The moment police discovered the hidden dungeon was captured on video. Officers removed a heavy concrete door to reveal a tiny, squalid cell. Inside were Sabine and Laetitia, pale, malnourished, but alive. The girls had been chained to the bed and showed signs of prolonged abuse. Their rescue was emotional for even the hardened officers who found them. Sabine had endured 80 days of captivity. Laetitia, just a few days. Their survival was miraculous given what had happened to previous victims. As they emerged into the daylight for the first time in months, Belgium collectively held its breath. The girls were immediately taken to hospitals and reunited with their devastated families. Dutroux's confession. Under interrogation, Dutroux revealed the locations of more buried bodies. He led police to the backyard of another property in Sarre-la-Buissière, where they exhumed the bodies of Julie and Melissa, buried alongside Weinstein. Later, the bodies of Anne and Ifye were discovered under a shed at another of his properties. Dutroux admitted to kidnapping the girls but blamed their deaths on his accomplices. His confession was chilling in its detachment. He described horrific crimes without emotion or remorse. He positioned himself as merely a supplier for a larger pedophile network, a claim that would spark years of conspiracy theories. Whether calculated deception or truth, his statements cast doubt on the entire investigation. Evidence of police incompetence. As details emerged, public outrage grew. Police had received specific tips about Dutroux but failed to act. They had searched his home while Julie and Melissa were imprisoned there but didn't find them. Video evidence showed police spending only minutes in the basement, where a clearly visible recent concrete wall concealed the dungeon. Officers failed to analyze suspicious items found in Dutroux's possession. Most damningly, at least 27 witnesses had come forward with information about Dutroux before his arrest, yet none of these leads was properly investigated. This wasn't just incompetence, it appeared systematic. Questions arose about whether corruption had protected Dutroux. The conspiracy theories. The failures were so extreme that many Belgians couldn't believe they were mere incompetence. Theories emerged that Dutroux was protected by high-ranking officials in a pedophile network. Several witnesses claimed to have seen important figures at parties where children were abused. Key evidence mysteriously disappeared. At least 20 potential witnesses died unexpectedly before testifying. Judge Jean-Marc Connerotte, who rescued the girls and arrested Dutroux, was removed from the case on a technicality. The replacement investigators seemed less aggressive in pursuing leads involving powerful figures. Whether true or not, these theories reflected a profound breakdown of trust between Belgian citizens and their institutions. The White March, a nation's outrage. On October 20, 1996, Belgium witnessed its largest peaceful demonstration ever. Over 300,000 people marched through Brussels wearing white to symbolize hope and demand change. Parents carried pictures of missing children. Citizens held white balloons and flowers. People of all ages and backgrounds united in their outrage. The White March became an iconic moment in Belgian history, a visual representation of a nation's collective grief and fury. The protesters demanded judicial reform, better victim protection, and accountability from officials. The chants echoed through the capital. Never again. It was a powerful statement that Belgium would no longer tolerate a system that failed its most vulnerable. The removal of Judge Connerotte. Judge Jean-Marc Connerotte had become a national hero after rescuing Sabine and Laetitia. He pursued the investigation aggressively, following all leads regardless of where they pointed. But in October 1996, Belgium's Supreme Court removed him from the case. His offense? attending a fundraising dinner for victims' families where he accepted a small gift of spaghetti and a pen. This was deemed a conflict of interest. The decision sparked immediate protests. Hundreds of thousands took to the streets in the White March just days later. To many Belgians, Connerat's removal seemed like a deliberate attempt to derail the investigation, just as it was uncovering uncomfortable truths about Belgium's elite. The Dutroux effect, institutional reform. The Dutroux case catalyzed major reforms in Belgium. The entire police system was restructured, merging the gendarmerie, judicial, and municipal police into one integrated force. The justice system was overhauled to provide better support for victims. New protocols were established for missing children cases, including the creation of Child Focus, Belgium's Center for Missing Children. Parliament established special committees to investigate judicial and police failures. Background checks became mandatory for those working with children. Psychological support services were expanded for victims of abuse. These changes, known collectively as the Dutroux effect, represented Belgium's determination that such failures would never happen again. The prison break. April 1998, in a development that stunned the nation, Marc Dutroux managed to escape custody during a court visit. While examining case documents, he seized a guard's gun and fled. The entire country went into lockdown. Schools closed. Parents kept children indoors. For 4 hours, Belgium held its breath as a massive manhunt mobilized. Dutroux was captured in a nearby forest, but the damage was done. The justice minister resigned in disgrace. The escape highlighted yet another institutional failure and reinforced public skepticism about the system's ability to handle Dutroux. For many, it confirmed suspicions that powerful forces were helping him, while others saw it as further evidence of incompetence at every level. The trial finally begins. After years of delays, Dutroux's trial finally began in March 2004, nearly 8 years after his arrest. The proceedings were moved to Arlon, a small town near Luxembourg, to avoid media circus in larger cities. The courthouse was specially reinforced with bulletproof glass and heavy security. All of Belgium watched as 450 witnesses prepared to testify. Dutroux appeared in court behind bulletproof glass, showing no remorse. His defense strategy was to portray himself as a pawn in a larger conspiracy, pointing fingers at Belgian authorities. The trial would last 3 months, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal and forcing Belgium to confront its darkest nightmare once again. The survivors testify. The most powerful moments of the trial came when Sabine Dardenne and Laetitia Delhaize took the stand. Now young women, they faced their tormentor with extraordinary courage. Sabine, in particular, confronted Dutroux directly. "I want to know why I had to stay 80 days in that disgusting cellar," she demanded. Dutroux had no answer. Her testimony, along with her diary kept during captivity, left no doubt about his guilt. The survivors' strength moved the nation to tears. Their testimony destroyed Dutroux's claims that he was protecting them. By facing the monster who had stolen their childhoods, Sabine and Laetitia reclaimed their power and gave voice to those victims who could no longer speak. Legacy and Lessons, Belgium Today. On June 22, 2004, Marc Dutroux was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 30 years. Michel Martin received 30 years, but was controversially released after serving 16. Le Lièvre was sentenced to 25 years. The case forever changed Belgium. Child protection laws were strengthened. Police procedures were reformed. Yet skepticism about powerful networks persists. The parents of victims continue fighting for full transparency. Many Belgians still believe the complete truth remains hidden. The Dutroux case taught brutal lessons about institutional vigilance and the cost of failure. Belgium today is a nation transformed by tragedy, more protective of its children and more demanding of its leaders. The memory of the victims ensures that Belgium will never forget. Closing scene. Remembering the victims. The story of Marc Dutroux is not just about evil, but about the innocent lives destroyed. Julie Lejeune and Melissa Rousseau, just 8 years old. And Marshall, 17. Ifye Lambrex, 19. Bernard Weinstein, Dutroux's accomplice turned victim. And the survivors, Sabine Dardenne and Laetitia Delhaize, who carry invisible scars to this day. Each year, Belgium holds memorials for the victims. Their names are etched into the nation's consciousness. Their photographs remain familiar to every Belgian. In remembering them, Belgium honors its pledge to protect the vulnerable, to demand accountability from power, and to never again allow monsters to hide in plain sight. The Beast of Belgium is locked away, but his victims will never be forgotten.